to welcome you to the Wednesday, February 26, 2025 regular meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Wormick,
Present.
Vice Chair Alain,
Here.
Commissioner Baker,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Murphy,
Present.
Commissioner Rotman,
Here.
Commissioner Morrell.
Here.
Can we have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, the agenda was available publicly and on the exterior bulletin board of City Hall by 9 p.m. on Thursday, February 20th, in accordance with city policies and procedures.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. So quick.
At this point, we are in public comment. This time is set aside for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on consent calendar and other agenda items and items in our general subject matter jurisdiction. Please note that we can't take action if an item is not on our posted agenda. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Testimony for public hearings may be offered at this time or at the hearing. Members who would like to comment on the consent calendar or new business are directed to comment under this portion of the agenda. And the new business item is item 4A, if somebody is here on item 4A. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak?
We do have one member of the public online who has his hand raised. I believe he wants to speak on the public hearing item, but we will ask if he would like to speak now, if you just bear with me for 1 second. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. Mr. Alexander, you may either choose to speak now or during the public hearing item, which will follow. Your choice.
I can wait for public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There being no members of the public who wish to speak, the public comment section is closed. The next item is the consent calendar, which is the approval of the minutes of January 22, 2025. Is there a motion?
Move to accept. Approve.
And I would second, but under discussion, just a couple of quick items on page 3 of the minutes. It's the listing of the conditions for the project on North Palm Canyon. And item number 4, it's written sidewalks should be 3 foot wide minimum. I think it's fair to add the words and may be incorporated into the drive aisle, because we were understanding that they weren't going to be able to provide a distinctive 3 foot sidewalk. So it was always intended to be part of the drive aisle, which was 22 feet wide. And then, and again, just want to make sure that's known going forward. It doesn't matter if it's in the minutes. Number 7, the use of Corten steel. Corten steel is C-O-R-T-E-N. Just a bit of semantics there.
Can make those corrections.
With that,
And
my
this-
second.
Do you accept those changes?
I do.
Can you call the roll, please?
Vice Chair Alain,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Chair Wormick,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Rotman,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrell.
Yes.
Item B on the consent calendar is the acceptance of the resignation of Jim Harlan from the Architectural Review Committee. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Now we are at public hearings. The first item before us is the request by Chris Pardo, Design Element Architecture, on behalf of On Table Media LLC for approval of a conditional use permit to operate a new bar cocktail lounge within a multi-use commercial building located at 2481 North Palm Canyon Drive. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Thank you. The project under consideration tonight is a conditional use permit for a new bar. And before staff starts this presentation, staff would like to mention that the public integrity disclosure form, which was included in the packet, included information that was inaccurate. And On Table Media LLC is actually solely owned by Mr. Adnan Lapamuk. And the revised public integrity disclosure form is in front of you tonight. So this is a project site. The applicant is proposing a bar within an existing commercial building. The site is located at the southwest corner of North Palm Canyon Drive and West Racket Club Road. And the property is located in the C1 zone, and the existing commercial building is 2-story. And the site is non-conforming to the current general plan and the zoning, some aspects of the general plan and the zoning code regulations. The building is currently unoccupied, and bookstore and offices, along with the bar, which requires the CUP application approval, will be occupying this commercial building in the future. And these are the images of the property as existing. As you can see, the building faces North Palm Canyon Drive, and the rear of the building has a parking lot which faces an alley and a residential use across the alley. And this is a site plan. As you can see, the building is pushed towards North Palm Canyon Drive, and there's a parking spaces in the back. As it was briefly indicated in the staff report, this property is currently going through a building safety plan check review for exterior and interior alterations. And once the project is completed, the site will accommodate 4 standard parking spaces in the back, as well as a handicap space. And these are the floor plans of the building. The first floor is on the left side. This is the location of the proposed bar, which is going to be located right next to the proposed bookstore, and there will be an office space. And the second floor there's a utility room which faces the rear parking lot, and applicant is proposing to utilize the space to store trash bins. And the second floor will accommodate 2 office spaces. The proposed bar is 248 square feet in the area, and it's going to accommodate 10 seats, no kitchens proposed, and the operation will be conducted in conjunction with the operation of the bookstore, according to the latest information provided by the applicant. The bar will operate between 10 a.m. and 2 a.m. 7 days a week, and the bar is going to be operated by 1 person, and it's going to require Type 42 ABC liquor license. Issues. As staff mentioned, and it was analyzed in the staff report, this property was built in 1964 and non-conforming to different aspects of the general plan and the C1 zone development standards, such as general plan density requirement, minimum lot and dimension, off-street parking, trash enclosure. And there's an existing chain link fence in the back of the property for which there are no city records available. And the project requires a land use permit amendment approval to address the off-street parking deficiency. And this land use permit amendment is subject to review and approval by the director, it is excluded from this conditional use permit review. So these are the non-conforming features. The general plan density requirement. Per the general plan, the maximum allowable floor area ratio for this site is 0.50. However, based on the information provided on the plans, the site's floor area ratio is 0.56 now. However, there is no expansion or addition proposed to the building as a part of this project. Therefore, there will be no change to the floor area ratio of the site. And the site is non-conforming to the minimum lot dimension and size requirement right now. However, this is a legally created lot. It's a legal lot of record. Therefore, the site is buildable. And the third one is that the site currently does not have a trash enclosure. However, there is no space to construct a new trash enclosure which meets the zoning specifications. And for this reason, applicants proposing to utilize a utility room to store trash bins. To address the trash enclosure issue, staff is recommending a conditions of approval which requires the applicant to contact Palm Springs Disposal Services and confirm that the company can provide appropriate trash service for the site. And off-street parking, the site is designed with 5 parking spaces, while 11 spaces will be required for the entire use on this property per the zoning code. In 2023, the director approved a parking waiver to address the parking deficiency issue when a restaurant was proposed at the site. And applicants requesting amendment to this previously approved land use permit for the proposed bar use. Per the zoning code requirement, the parking requirements for restaurant and bar use is identical based on the size, amount of seating, and the uses within the building as proposed. And finally, the Director of Planning Services, the approval body of the land use permit amendment, and for this reason, the matter is excluded from tonight's Planning Commission discussion. In order for the Planning Commission to approve this conditional use permit, the specific findings that are stated in the zoning code have to be met. And after analyzing the project, the staff thinks that the proposed project is consistent with the intent of the general plan and the zoning code, and the site is appropriate for the proposed use, and recommended conditions of approval are appropriate for the approval of the proposed use and are necessary to protect the general welfare of the public. In conclusion, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution and approve the proposed project subject to the conditions of approval recommended by staff, which include but are not limited to the following. The first one is requiring land use permit amendment approval to address the parking issue, and requiring a confirmation by Palm Springs Disposal Services that the site can receive appropriate trash service, and requiring that the chain link fence be removed or the property owner to submit a proof that it was legally installed. And this concludes the staff presentation, and the applicant is available, so is the staff, to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Are there any questions for staff? Go ahead.
I noticed in one of the pictures that the alleyway behind the building, for many years it was just dirt with potholes. It looks like it's been repaved now. Can you confirm that that alley has been upgraded?
Control room, could you please go back to the project slides, please?
But yeah, it used to be horrible.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, that's much better.
Are you talking about the alley?
Yeah, on the bottom. Yeah.
Yes.
It used to be horrible. It used to just have potholes in it, and it was.
I think the section of the alley still has an improved road. This particular section of the road, which is right in front of the project site, is paved, but it does not extend all the way.
I thought it did. I drove it. And it does extend
Oh,
all the
they
way.
have fixed it all. Okay.
It looks from the key map in the top left corner that it at least extends to the north past the 7-Eleven to the next major east-west street. I know that there are portions of that alley that extend beyond this block that are in poor condition, but I think this block seems to be
I was just
improved.
concerned with trash trucks trying
Yeah.
to get back there.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Rotman.
Yeah, parking is, so can you give me a little history on the approval back in 2022, waiving the parking requirement?
Yeah, so this falls into the category of existing structures that are legally nonconforming that, when we looked back at the permit history, this building has been used for a variety of purposes over the years of similar scope and scale of this one. So obviously, there's no ability for them with a fully built-out site that's already exceeding their FAR to go in and provide additional parking. So the zoning code does allow me as the director to make certain exceptions or variances to the parking requirements to recognize those pre-existing conditions. So that's really the fundamental thought process is We don't have an ability to go in and require additional parking. There's no space on site. It's an existing building. So it's essentially recognizing a pre-existing condition.
Okay, thank you. I think, I think the rest of the questions I have to do with the applicant. Thank you.
Vice Chair Land?
How long has the building been vacant? How many years?
Let me, I know that the property owner was required to file for vacant building permit. However, I think that was done in the last few years, I think, or pretty recent. And staff was not able to find the exact time when the building was vacated entirely.
Okay. And, but during recent staff memory, have there been other applications to use this building for anything that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, and based on the planning permit plan history, I did not see anything that would relate to different uses, other than the time that when the applicant submitted construction drawing for the restaurant use. But again, at the time they are proposing the same office in a bookstore, so
Okay.
that's the only thing.
And since this is a CUP, it would run with the land. I'm wondering what would happen if and at this point, it appears that it's part and parcel with the bookstore. If the bookstore wasn't viable, went out of business for any reason, would this be a standalone bar in that building? The way the project is currently conditioned?
Because the CUP is being issued just for the bar use, in theory, it could continue to operate as a standalone bar use. However, it would be restricted to the size, scope, scale that is being approved by the CUP tonight. So it's, as per the permit, a very limited in scale. They couldn't effectively take over the entire space without coming back for a modification.
Okay. And my last question is for you, Director Hadlin. Parking, this is dependent upon your approval of a land use permit for the parking. Have you reviewed this enough to have developed your own position? Are you favorably disposed to approve a permit if this project is?
I am favorably disposed to do so. We did conduct a preliminary review, effectively waiting on the signature pending the commission's decision tonight. So I didn't want to get ahead of your decision, because if the use is not permitted, then the LUP becomes moot. But as Noriko sort of alluded to, looking back at the 2023 land use permit that I had executed at that time, there's no net increase in the amount of parking required between the restaurant and the bar, and that was really the thinking in being comfortable approving that change pending tonight's decision.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Murphy?
The CUP is necessary because of the bar,
Correct.
not the bookstore.
Correct.
So they are separate. And then the parking is really, parking issue and the limitation of parking lot and street parking is not part of our consideration.
There is no street parking.
There's 5 spaces on Racket Club
On
that I
Racket Club,
counted.
yeah,
If
yeah.
people are careful how they park.
I
There's
thought you
up to
meant
5
on Palm
places.
Canyon, which, just for clarity, is at this point Caltrans jurisdiction. It is Highway 111. But yes, you're right, on Racket Club.
My question is, that's not a consideration in front of
So-
the commission tonight, is that right?
That's right. Because the parking deficiency is being addressed per the zoning code through the land use permit process, which is my decision. Technically, I have the authority to grant that variance, and I'm expressing to you all tonight that I will do so pending your decision tonight. So the parking is handled through a separate process that has been applied for concurrently and will be approved following this, should you all move forward.
Thank you.
Other questions, Commissioner Rotman?
Yeah, related to the CUP of the bar use and its attachment to the 200 and odd square feet that this is, in the letter from the applicant, it was mentioned that they wanted to potentially serve champagne or whatever in the bookstore. So do we need to condition that as well, either to allow it or disallow that?
You could, to be clean about it. I think that becomes an ABC issue, certainly, in how they're going to issue the liquor license for the space and how they're going to delineate where liquor is permitted to be sold and consumed versus where it cannot be. But it may be good to indicate in your approval tonight that while the bar itself is restricted to 200 and odd square feet, the CUP would allow consumption in the other tenant spaces subject to ABC approval, something to that effect.
Okay, thank you.
If you wish to do so.
And there being no other questions, I had two. On A14, there's a drawing of what the space will look like. Is this going on to the Architectural Review Commission?
This would not go to ARC, given that there are no
This would
exterior
not. So
changes.
when we're approving it tonight, are we approving the exterior as well?
No, that part was already done. So the exterior changes and interior changes, they went through a review by architectural review back in 2022. And that's on the page 3 of the staff report about the related relevant city actions.
So what we're seeing has already been reviewed by the Architectural Review. So we can anticipate that this is what it's going to look like.
What the plan on the page that Noriko just referenced is what it will look like if it's not been fully
But
built
on
out yet.
page A14 of the drawings is what I'm asking about.
This was a part of the plan check review that was approved.
I like it. I'm just trying to make sure this is what we're getting.
I'm just flipping through the package. Just
Okay,
give me
yes.
1 second.
So it was approved as a part of building permit number 2022-5460 in 2024. Applicant has submitted a revision to approve plan check, which is subject to review, but that was mainly intended for the bar use. That is my understanding.
So the
Yes.
revisions are on the bar use. Yes, it
Right.
will look like this.
Yes, it will look like that.
And the mural will stay?
As we understand it, yes.
The mural will stay?
Yes, and that's a question we can ask the applicant as
And
well.
I will ask the applicant, it being my favorite mural in the city. I think at this point, we're going to be opening the hearing, the public hearing on this item. Is the applicant here? Would you come forward?
Just right here.
You have 10 minutes to present your project if you wish to use it.
And please state your name for the record as well.
Sure. My name is Adelaide Lapamuk,
My name is Adnan Lapamuk.
and I guess we've just heard pieces of it, but basically our project is all in the same, the bookstore and the bar. We're hoping for it to be called Books and Secrets. The idea is that you come and buy your books, and through a bookshelf, there's a little portal to a very small champagne bar. Why? Because I love to read and I also love champagne, so it's just a combination of the things that I'm super passionate about. What else am I missing? The main changes that we made from a restaurant to a bar just addressed not being able to build a full kitchen with a grease trap and all of the $500,000 trappings for a very small place. So we still plan to serve food and light bites. So it's kind of a little cringy to hear it called a bar over and over and over again, because it's just a spot to have a glass of bubbly with your book club or alone while you're reading. And we are in touch with the artist to redo the mural. So I mean, as long as he wants to come and fix it, we are.
In the last 2 years, we've been.
We talk to him every couple of months, but our hands have been tied as far as making building changes because we haven't had a permit to do so. So we've just been patient.
And are there questions? Thank you. Do you have more? I need to open it for the public if the public is here.
Yeah, that's.
And stay here and come
Absolutely.
back because we'll have questions.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Roberto, the project manager for the project. I'm here to answer any technical questions you guys might have in regards to the building and whatnot. In regards to the outside, yes, it would look the same. We didn't make any changes at all. The whole parking situation, like Noriko said, it will be addressed in the LUP, and it actually got better because we had a bigger space before due to the front stair being in the way because we actually had it removed. So everything's now staying the way it is, and the parking load actually went down, and it's favorable in our part. But if you guys have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer.
We don't ask questions right now, so if you're just to
Oh, okay.
present to us, and then I'll allow the public to speak, and then I'll bring you back for questions.
Sounds good.
Are there members of the public who wish to speak on this item? And we have one person.
Online, after we do, for those online, after we do in council chambers, we'll come back to you.
Hello, my name is Wayne Gottlieb. I've been in Palm Springs for about 40 years, and that building has always been a mess. And I cannot think of any better people to run it and to create a beautiful atmosphere there than the two that are proposing to do this. They run a fantastic ice cream shop in Palm Springs. And I know that they will do a great job and they will follow every rule that you request of them. So I just hope that you approve it.
Thank you.
We'll move to Michael Alexander. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Michael Alexander. I wish to express my objection to this permit. I own the property immediately behind the subject property. Per the summary, this property is a substandard lot, contains an overly dense building, lacks off-street parking, uses a non-permitted chain link fence, and lacks sufficient off-street parking and trash enclosure. Now you propose to approve a 7th exception for this property for a bar. Wow, what's next?
Something has dropped.
Residency, I've had to tolerate the terrible condition of this building with its broken windows, reported on May 24th, 2024, unshielded floodlights on the rear of the building, which shine into 3 of my 4 bedrooms, debris dumped in the parking lot, etc. These owners have had 4 years to improve the basic condition of this property. Now, without dealing with these problems, they want special treatment for their proposed plans. When will some agency within Palm Springs hold them accountable and require that they demonstrate some neighborly behavior? In my opinion, there needs to be a special consideration given when commercial and residential properties are so close. Under no circumstances do I think it is reasonable to approve a bar whose hours are 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. so close to residences. Linking this with the bookstore does not mitigate how inappropriate this is. At the very least, I ask that you limit the hours of operation of this bar that you already seem to have approved. I think that requiring them to close at 9 p.m. is not unreasonable. Further, I would ask that this CUP is only valid for this bar and owner for this proposal. It should not be transferable. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? If the applicant is still here, are there questions of the applicant? Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, I'm assuming from the floor plan, well, I'm not really clear from the floor plan, is the main entry to the facility, to the bookstore and to the bar area from the front or from the back side?
It is from the front side. You have to go through the bookstore to get to the bar.
Okay, so no customers will be allowed to enter from the back door, essentially?
It is our plan for that. We have one exception for accessibility because there's one accessible parking in the back. So and we have a elevator that we're putting in. So in the off chance that someone in a wheelchair drives themselves to the bar, they will be the ones coming in through the back. But for the whole experience of it, and we're marketing people, the whole point is to go in through the front, through the bookstore.
I'm curious as to why there are so many stairs, because it looks like a ground level first floor and a second story. Is the bar is on the ground level, I assume, correct?
The stairs are pre-existing.
Right, and is there two sets of stairs, like it gets you halfway up, because it's not clear?
I think the building's on a slope, so you definitely walk in at the ground level, but by the time you get to the back of the building, there's stairs, so we just incorporated it into the...
There's a foot difference between the front and the back.
Okay, only, okay.
So we just incorporated the existing stairs into the design.
The front area of the building has out front next to the public sidewalk has a railing that appears to perhaps have been put up in conjunction with the formerly proposed restaurant. Is that true, or? I'm wondering why that area is there. Typically, those kind of railings would be put up for alcohol service adjacent to a public sidewalk. So you're not intending to put any alcohol use out in the front area, right?
No, the railing, do you want to mention, it's pre-existing.
It's existing. It's been there.
And you intend to keep it there?
We're removing it.
You're removing it, okay. Okay, then in your response to, I believe, Mr. Alexander, who just spoke, you stated that the parking in the back was going to be for the handicap accessible and employees primarily. And I thought that was odd that you weren't going to provide any parking, that you would provide parking for employees who could park off-site and walk a block, but all of your customers were going to be coming how? Because there's no parking on Palm Canyon, of course.
There's a huge parking lot across the street, diagonally across the street, and there is
the Del Taco, or at the Del Taco?
There's a parking lot,
Like diagonal.
not the Del Taco, but across the street the other way. Also, there's a few spots on Palm
Carl's
Canyon,
Jr.?
a few doors down.
Carl's Jr.
Yes,
That's where Carl's Jr. is, right?
I've never been to Carl's Jr.
Yeah. Carl's Jr. is actually closer. They'd be parking at Carl's Jr.
Or that.
Right.
The parking is also we have offices upstairs, so we'll have tenants that we need to give some parking to.
All right, thank you.
If I may add, we spent probably about a year petitioning to get some extra parking. We went as far as getting in touch with Caltrans. So it's probably one of the things that have slowed this whole thing down about a year or so. So it is something that we've considered and thought about.
Unfortunately, the right-of-way is what it is out there, and there's no extra room for squeezing parking in on that section of Palm Canyon. There is a couple 100 yards further to the south, but not here.
So in your estimation for the bookstore, how many patrons you anticipate being there at a single point in time? I'm relating that to parking. So if you...
Honestly, I've run the ice cream shop that's a few blocks closer to in town.
I love it very much.
I have my managers here. They can probably attest. We maybe see 3 people at the same time, and that feels like, oh, wow, there's a lot of people in here. So a bookstore on the north end of town is going to have a few people in at best at the same time. I mean, I'll be really stoked for more, but very surprised.
Okay, thank you.
Would the rear of the building, I'm assuming the parking lot would be resurfaced and the chain link fence would come down?
Yes, the chain link fence, honestly, is because we had a squatter, and you can check the police records. We spent about $10,000 of our own money evicting him, and it was the best that we could do to not have him come back. It is a temporary fence. That was the whole point of it. And
So-
it is in the plans. The resurfacing of the parking lot is in the plans, including
And
some
then
landscaping.
as far as the spotlight, the floodlight in the back, is that a part of your property? That the one that's shining into the neighbor?
Yeah, there's a light that's.
In the mic, please.
Sorry. Yeah, there's a light that's in the, right attached to the property, to sconce. We can definitely modify that to address the neighbor's concern.
Okay,
And
so
just
we-
shine down the parking lot instead of shining against the buildings.
Okay, good. So we'll want to condition
This is
that.
the first time that we've heard of this, so, I mean, we're pretty responsive about things. If people tell us, we'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
The little light on the back.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions. Have you laid out any trash bins in this trash room to see if it's even going to work?
Yeah, we laid out, and it fits, I mean, consider that it's gonna be the water heaters are also in there. It fits about 4 regular size bins.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised, but, just from looking at it, but,
Yeah.
okay. You might want to swing the door out in that area just to make it easier to get more stuff in there. Maybe a little expense there, but I think you'll find it much more functional to be able to swing that door out and be able to take that floor space for trash bins or water heater, because I think it's going to be really tight in there. And, yeah, I'd be
Yeah,
surprised
that's a
how
good
many
point.
you can actually get in there.
Thank you.
I'm a little confused, and again, I know we're not really looking so much at the floor plan, but there is some confusion in my mind about how you actually move through the space. So from the rear at the north end of it, you have a door that enters in, and that is at +4 feet. And then you have another door that goes to a walk-in freezer that's at 0 elevation.
Yep.
And so how does that work?
So when you enter through the back, you go through that north door. That's the main entry.
Yeah.
There, and everything there is at 4 feet. I guess it would be a typo. The walk-in cooler would be at 4 feet as well, because
4 feet.
you're there. And then from there, you take the lift down to 0 elevation, and all the bathroom and the rest of the space is at 0.
So from an operations point of view, the walk-in freezer is for use by the bar and bookstore. So I'm just going to throw this out, and you can do with it as you want. It's not really a planning commission issue, but I might suggest flipping it with where the lift is. And that way you can get direct access all the way from the back up into the corridor that leads up to the office in the front, and then also the bar. You can walk around it and maybe open the freezer into the storage area off the bar area, if you're following me.
So flip it where the bathrooms are.
No, you're going to flip it to the south where the lift is.
Where the lift is. Got it.
Yeah, I think you'll be able to make things work better and circulate so that there's a more logical path to get from the parking to the bar and to the office space.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay?
Yep. So it would open up to the hallway.
Yes, you'll wrap the hallway around, you'll jog it around that. Try it.
Thank you.
So office, access, connection between, again, we've already talked about it, but I had some questions or concerns about how you actually go from the parking structure in the back, the parking lot in the back, to the bookstore. You have to go through the bar. And so, because the building has limited parking in the back and you're depending on your customers primarily to park somewhere on Racket Club or across Kitty Corner across the street. It just seems really kind of convoluted. So I would, yeah, it doesn't, it's not a logical yes, but, and then also, if you take the, I'm aware of the unhoused issue in the area, and if you take down the fence, are you thinking that you're going to build a wall, at least on the property line, to separate you from the empty lot adjacent?
We called out for a hedge.
For a hedge?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Because the next thing I was gonna talk about is shade for the parking area. And I think there's a palm tree or something in the very, very back, but I was wondering whether you could actually carve out, because your parking comes in at an angle, whether you could carve out a little triangle area and plop a couple trees back there, which would provide some shade, especially because that would be on the south side. It would give shade for the cars in the parking lot.
Yeah, we can look at that, and if we have the space, I think it's a good idea.
I think that's all I have. Thank you.
I am curious about the hours of operation. Like the neighbor who spoke, I am having a little bit of a hard time understanding. Well, I want to understand from a business perspective, do you really need to be open to 2 a.m.? Is it something that is necessary? It starts to feel more like a bar and less like a bookstore with those kinds of hours.
We definitely don't plan to stay open that late. I just didn't want the restrictions. So when we were applying for this, I think the hours were from when we were applying for a restaurant. And if in the event that, say, somebody wants to have their birthday party or some sort of event there, I just didn't want to start the business with a restriction, but I have no intention. It's not even possible to run a business from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. I personally am always in bed before midnight. We do keep the shop open until midnight during the summer because it's hot. People don't leave their homes until probably 9 o'clock in the summer. So I applied for all of the possible hours just for the flexibility of building the business, but we don't plan to be raging until 2 a.m. So it was for this moment of hours negotiation.
Just in case. Okay, and my other question is,
But sorry.
Okay.
Bookstores are traditionally open very late, though. It's typical to be in a city and strolling by a bookstore at 10 or 11 p.m. That's fairly normal for bookstores. So.
like you, I'm in bed by midnight, so I don't know what goes in bookstores.
I've been doing my research on bookstores in cities, so that's something that I've learned over the last few years.
And then the other thing is, I'm curious as to the viability of the bookstore without the champagne lounge, we'll call it. Is this something, obviously, I think there's a community interest in filling a vacant space and getting a business in there because it does good things. It is near the residential zone, and I personally live adjacent in a residential zone adjacent to a commercial zone, so I know that there's always some tension there. But I also understand that when I choose to live there, I choose to live near businesses, and that's what comes with it. So I'm looking for things that might make this relatively compatible with the residential neighbors, but not make the business unviable. So I'm wondering if first of all, that's why I was wondering about the hours, and I'm wondering, would you even be standing in front of us proposing a project at all if it didn't have the lounge component, the champagne component to it?
No, I mean, it started maybe 10 years ago as a bookstore, and my husband, who I will very passionately call a marketing genius, said, well, how's the bookstore going to stay alive? And then we built on it from there. And the Books and Secrets brand is something that we've been working on for at least 5 or 6 years. I had the idea for a bookstore, Champagne Speakeasy, before I bought the building. So we've been looking for a space to house the idea. So without one, probably this building's going for sale tomorrow.
Thank you.
Other question? It's my understanding that 95% of your clients are all coming through the Palm Canyon entrance, that only your tenants that I would assume working like 9 to 5 would be in that back area plus that one accessible spot. So I'm anticipating there wouldn't be a lot of traffic, either foot traffic or vehicular traffic in the rear. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I did have.
Yeah, I just had a question that sort of follows that same line of thought. Did you look at all at making the front door ADA compliant?
We did. It's probably a question for Roberto. That was the hope, was so that someone in a wheelchair could experience. I mean, you can go through the front door. It's just the parking. So someone can.
Yeah, the front door is ADA.
Front door is already
It's already ADA. Yeah, the width of the door is in compliance. Also, there's no grade change. You can roll in.
Okay, that's good. That was.
Just the parking.
Yeah, I didn't want somebody with a disability to feel like they're being excluded in some way.
Same. We fought for that.
On the same lines of the difficulty in the front and back door issue, rideshare is likely going to be a consistent component of the business, I would think, especially in the evening. It's not safe for a rideshare to stop in the travel lane of State Highway 111. There's no room other than in the travel lane. So don't you anticipate, that's a leading question, don't you anticipate that your rideshare customers will need to use the back door? Because I'm remiss if we're going to approve a bar business that's going to rely on rideshare stopping in the travel lane of a state highway.
There's a parking spot maybe 20 feet further from the front of the building. So we're just the last spot that is redlined, if that's what the travel lane is. So I've parked there. It's many steps ahead of our business plans, so I haven't gotten this far because we haven't gotten as far as being able to build yet, but I'm hoping to be able to use that space for valet. And I like the idea of all-day valet because I think that adds a little cachet to the upscale bookstore that we're trying to build.
I drove the site front and back today. I'd be surprised if it's only 20 feet. I think it's quite a bit further down Palm Canyon, but I may be wrong.
We don't. I do see that there is, and this creates a different issue, but there's parking across the street. There's space that isn't redlined across the street, but of course we don't want people running across Palm Canyon. I do know that there are ways to coordinate with Uber and the other rideshare programs in terms of where they will put your PIN when you call to a business. So that is something that we could encourage the applicant to look at through that process to, for example, have the PIN take you to 7-Eleven or to the Racket Club frontage and have people walk around the corner. It's not that far to avoid the conflict that you're talking, because I do think that that's a valid point. And I think that that's something, I don't know exactly how that works, but I do know that businesses can do that.
This is on the design. You are going to be working with the design that Chris Pardo did, that we're seeing on A14.
That's correct.
That's correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would clarify that if there are deviations from that, it would require coming back for an amendment.
But, so, So that's confirmed that we're working with that. Okay,
Right, because it was an action by the ARC, it's in effect, so we would then have to modify that.
great. I don't seeing no more questions of you. I think the matter, thank you so much.
Actually, sorry, Madam Chair, before you close the hearing, there are a couple of other members online that I forgot to call on. I don't know if they wish to speak, but I just want to give them the opportunity if I can, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
please.
If you are online and we have not called on you to speak on this item, please raise your hand at this time. Okay, Madam Chair, no additional speakers.
With that, the public hearing is closed and it's before the commission. Before we take a motion, I've heard a couple of comments regarding, and I don't know if those are in our purview, things like swinging the utility, the trash room, not the utility door outward. That's not in our purview, is it?
No, but I think that you could put them I think you could put them in the motion or the resolution as recommendations to the applicant.
Recommendations. Okay. With this, can I just get a sense, before we go, a sense of whether we're looking at approval? We are looking at approval, good.
With conditions.
Would someone like to make the motion?
Well, can we, separate from that, can we just, do we want to just provide some comment, I think, first?
I think comment would
Because
be
that'll
good.
help form our conditions?
Yes. Would you like to start?
I guess I volunteered. First of all, I'm so supportive of adaptive reuse of existing buildings, and I understand the difficulties in trying to meet all of today's code requirements with a building that's been there for many, many, many decades. And I think we as a city need to be cognizant of that and be creative in how we allow businesses to come into these kinds of sites, because there's a number of them, as we know, throughout the city. That being said, I think we can do some things with conditions that will help, as Vice Chair Alayan said, sort of mitigate or ameliorate some of the concerns we might otherwise have, especially with the proximity to the residential across the alley. First and foremost, I think, and easy to do is the light shielding, which was mentioned and agreed to by the applicant. I too have a bit of a concern with the 2 a.m. hours, so I'm anxious to see where some of the other commissioners are. I certainly wouldn't preclude that from happening perhaps down the road, but I'm wondering if it was within our interest to curtail those hours to maybe midnight, at least for the first 6 months or so, or whatever the number is. And then if they want to change those hours, have them come back. Because I don't understand the bookstore itself opening at 1:30 in the morning. It then becomes, as we've said, more of a bar, which then has the potential to create more impacts to the residential. So those are my few comments.
Other comments? Yes, Commissioner Murphy?
Just to answer your question, that's not something I would be supportive of. I think the applicant made a good argument about having maximum flexibility going into this. And it makes sense to me that there would be times when there may be a special event or a party where it may need to stay open a little bit later. So I wouldn't want to put that restriction on the applicant. Plus, who's going to police it?
Other general comments?
I have a question for staff on that. Is there a mechanism by which a business can have a special event or a party, they get a over-the-counter permit or something for
Yeah,
a
I
special
have
occasion?
a few points on this, because I think we have had a history as the Planning Commission and as the city of regulating business hours through this process, and it's something that I think we've been uncomfortable with for a couple of years, and so since I've been here, in different conversations I've had with the city attorney's office and others, so I've been trying to move us a little bit away from that. Because I think that there are other regulations in the city, business regulations, the municipal code, et cetera, that deal with this issue. And so unless we have that to point to, I'm a little bit hesitant to regulate it through a conditional use permit process. Of course, I leave that all to you. And to answer the specific question you just asked, which was, remind me again.
Is there a process through which a over-the-counter permit can be issued for a particular event?
Yes, so
A few times a
the
year or
comparable
something?
I would give you is you can think of when we have Pride or other large events in the city,
Yeah.
we do issue land use permits for special events to extend operating hours. Typically where we use that is to extend beyond 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. for a lot of our downtown bars for things like Pride, et cetera. But that's usually to extend beyond normal operating hours of bars in coordination with other ABC regulations.
Other general comments?
Yeah, I would again state that ABC license, which is class 42, limits what they can do in the hours in which they can sell, and it's not in our purview to tell them, well, you can't stay open until 2 a.m. just because there's a potential that the 10 people who will be there will make excessive noise, annoying a neighbor in the back when they're actually exiting from the front on Palm Canyon.
And the other thing I would add to that, and it is included in the conditions and of course in the municipal code, is the noise ordinance. So after 10 p.m., it does severely restrict the type of noise that can be generated at a bar or any business in the city, any site in the city, such that, for example, amplified music becomes very difficult unless you have other measures and controls. So just adding that.
And have they asked for amplified music? I don't recall if that was in the permit.
We are, again, it's not a specific permission that needs to be granted. We are
Okay.
relying on the noise ordinance instead, which would effectively restrict it after a certain hour anyways.
After a certain hour. So,
I do, if we're on general comments
Yes.
still, okay, I do have two. First of all, I want to acknowledge and thank both the applicant and the concerned neighbor because there has been dialogue and email going back and forth. The commission has been copied on these things from between people who have different opinions and different concerns, and it has been civil. And in this era, that's just really refreshing. Questions were asked, information was provided in response, dialogue was open on both sides, and so thank you for that, because this is a situation in which not everybody gets everything that they want, and it's wonderful to have you handle it like adults. I appreciate that. Second thing is more of a technicality, and it's on one of the findings that we're required to make. I think it's finding number 2, where we have to find that that the project that the use is necessary or desirable for development of the community. And that wasn't really addressed in the findings that were proposed for us. And so with any motion that is made to approve this, I would suggest that we add a sentence saying, as conditioned, the proposed use will reactivate a long vacated building and serve as a deterrent to blighting conditions such as illegal camping and the dumping of trash, both of which are desirable for the development of the community. Just to make it clear that we recognize that it's not evident that this is in the best interest of the community, but there are good reasons for doing that.
Madam Chair, if I could just correct the
Yes.
record, because I want to correct something I said, which is you may use the CUP process to regulate business hours. That is something that you have the purview to do. The attorney just sort of corrected the words that I said, but I think operationally it just raises some of the concerns that I expressed. So I didn't want to leave the impression
That's
that you
good
couldn't
because we
so.
do it all the time.
Well, and again, I think we've been trying to move the needle a little away from it where it's been restrictive of businesses or where we're seeing a lot of amendments or sort of processes coming in to change that. But in this case, 2 a.m. to a different hour to mitigate a conflict with surrounding land uses is clearly within the scope.
so in terms of just going to comments, I do agree with you with changing the language in the findings. I think that would be helpful. When I look at this, it's an important building. We do want, and we have wanted to see commercial come up to the street. We'd like to see it flow further down the street, further south on both sides. I think we had that issue come up with us with the Starbucks proposal that got turned down by council. So I think this is doing something that we want. It is a difficult site. I am much more comfortable that the parking in the back is serving the office tenant, primarily the office tenants. I do think that it's important to shield. I think we're going to get a better looking building by an architect who I have respect for, who's done other significant work in the city. I think we'll get an improvement in the frontage. I don't know if there's a way of having this come back. I don't want to change their hours, but I might like it to come back after a year and see what the use has been, so that we deal with the 2 a.m. hour in a different way, which is coming back and just a report on the use to us. So if it is creating a problem, we would be then able to make changes. If it's possible to include the condition regarding the ride share, that if possible, they could designate where ride share drops off and picks up passengers. I think that helps for safety on that road. But they're not going to come outside. And I do like if possible, to swing the trash door outwards so that they have room for the trash in the utility room, along with the water heater. So that, if there was going to be a motion, that's where I probably would put it.
If I can just add the issue with the trash room door, since we are waiving the need to have a trash enclosure, I think actually there's justification to request that.
Sure, include it, and if we have a problem, we'll resolve it when we come back with the minutes. Let's do it that way.
Commissioner, having out of curiosity, does anyone know the hours of operation of a 7-Eleven? That's
think
open
it's
24
24/7.
hours, so there's vehicular traffic and people coming in and out all night long next door. So my understanding, it would probably be a lot less quiet, people going to the bookstore, than the people imbibing alcohol at 7-Eleven.
In the parking lot. So that's it. I guess I made a motion. Is there a second? And
Second?
is there any discussion?
Yeah, can I add a condition about the landscaping in the parking area?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so the addition of maybe 1 or 2 trees, and then definitely the hedge.
That is skewing out of scope of the CUP, because there's already an approved architectural application here, which includes landscaping. So that condition would require them to go back and amend the architectural review.
Hold on, wait. The
Landscaping
applicant-
is the purview as the architectural
No,
review
the
committee.
applicant said that they were going to put the hedge in.
So you can put if agreed to by the applicant, but you cannot condition it affirmatively.
Right, so the applicant's here. Does the applicant agree to a hedge?
The hedge has been called out.
The condition will need to read if agreed to by the applicant,
If
because
agreed
they
to the
can say it
applicant.
here, but the condition needs to read that way.
Right, and we could put the trees they may not agree to, but we could put those in if agreed to by the applicant.
Okay.
So do we have a motion?
I need to know the bullet points of the conditions, if you could summarize.
First, we're going to change the language on the finding to the language that Lori gave staff, and hopefully they have. The second is an approval with the following conditions: a shielding of the light in the back.
Lights, plural.
That this comes back to us in a year, that we keep the hours, but it comes back to us in a year for a review of the operations of the property with those hours. That we condition the utility room door to open outwards, and that if the applicant agrees, there will be a hedge in the back shielding the property to the south. And if the applicant agrees, they would add 1 to 2 trees in the back to shade the parking. The additional one is that the applicant will work with rideshare to designate a spot for drop-off and pickup that is safe, is as safe as possible for their patrons. Anything else? And accepting all of staff's conditions, other conditions regarding taking down the chain link fence.
And I will second that motion. Oh,
Any issues? Any issues?
Not for me.
Yes, just to make sure that our attorneys agree with what we're doing.
I
Who
have
you're in touch with.
no text blowing up my phone, so I think we're okay.
Okay, can you call the roll, please?
Chair Wormick,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Land,
yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Rotman,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrell.
Yes.
That is approved unanimously. Thank you so much. I am really looking forward to coming to your bookstore.
And it's okay if you serve ice cream there too.
Okay, moving right along. I wonder if the next item is going to be as lengthy as this one was. So we are moving to new business, and this is a request by McWriter of Realty Partners for approval of a major development permit to construct a new 4,012 square foot commercial building for a Sherwin-Williams paint store on a .38 acre undeveloped parcel located near the southeast corner of North Palm Canyon Drive and East Stevens Road, Zone C1, Section 10. And because this is new business, if the applicant is here, we only bring them up at our request, correct? So a staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. Control room, could you please move on to the next slides, please? Thank you. This is a major development permit application for a new commercial building. As introduced, it is for Sherwin-Williams Paint Store. The project site is located near the intersection of North Palm Canyon Drive and East Stevens Road. And this site is currently vacant, as you can see here. And the applicant is proposing to construct a 4,012 square foot building at a building height of 18 feet. And the proposed site design includes a bike parking area, trash enclosure, and landscape. And these are the images of the project site as currently exist. As you can see, there's no structure or anything. The site's condition is pretty bare, and the project area is defined by existing walls. Applicant's proposing this 4,012 square foot building, which is going to be located close to North Palm Canyon Drive. The parking lot, trash enclosure, and the bike parking area will be located in the rear of the building. And the site circulation will be provided by one-way drive aisle, which goes around the building. These are the proposed exterior elevations of the building. The applicant is proposing to use 2 types of stucco in 3 different colors, as well as the use of CMU veneer to accentuate the building elevations. And a similar architectural treatment is being proposed for all elevations. The primary the access to the building is actually provided on the east elevation, which faces a parking lot. And an access is also proposed on the west elevations. And these are the perspective drawings. As you can see here, similar architectural treatment is proposed on all sides, but not two elevations are identical. And these are building cross sections. The maximum building height is 18 feet. And on top of the building, the applicant is proposing a 4.5 foot high mechanical equipment screen. And although it's not shown here on the roof plan, the applicant is aware that this building needs to be solar ready per the building code. The proposed finished floor elevation of the building is going to be pretty much same as the existing building to the north. And the elevation difference between the proposed building and adjacent property to the south is about 2 feet. The project site is larger than the abutting parcels. And for this reason, the building is going to be bigger than the existing lots right next to the site. But overall, in terms of massing and height, it's pretty compatible and with the surroundings and appropriate for the site. And this is again just to show the different cross section and how the proposed building relates to the structure that's located on the east side of the project site. And this is a proposed floor plan. As you can see from this floor plan, the applicant is not proposing to conduct any kind of industrial activities that might cause any issues. The project site has the highest elevation near the northwest corner of the site. And right now, the topography slopes down from the corner towards the southeast corner. The proposed finished floor elevation will be pretty much identical or close to the highest point of the existing site. And the applicant is proposing a site engineering which will direct the on-site runoff to the southwest corner of the site where the drainage chamber is going to be located. And as required by the zoning code, the site is designed with a 5-foot wide planting area around the project site, and the proposed landscape indicates that it meets the minimum shading requirement for the parking lot. As proposed, the project has a minor design issues. These are the outdoor lighting plan. The submitted photometric plan does not fully conform to the zoning code requirements. And 2 end parking stalls that are facing the building do not meet the minimum width requirement of 11 feet. In order for the Planning Commission to approve this major development permit application, the specific findings have to be met, and the staff finds that the proposed project is consistent with the general plan zoning code with the implementation of the recommended conditions of approval. Height, scale, and massing are compatible with the surrounding existing developments and appropriate for the site. And stormwater management is incorporated into the overall site design, and project will not have a potential significant environmental impacts, and approval of the project will not have adverse effects on the public welfare, health, or safety. In conclusion, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution and approve the project subject to the conditions of approval recommended by staff. And this concludes the staff presentation, and the applicant and the owner of the property are both here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The matters before the commission, are there questions of staff? Yes. Oh, Commissioner Miller.
I don't know if this is for Noriko or for our esteemed engineers back there. I understand there's 2 curb cuts now existing to this site. So obviously they're now doing a one-way in and a one-way out. Was there any thought to removing one of the curb cuts and just doing an in and out in a combined, which would reduce the crossing of the sidewalk by 1, basically? Has there been any thought to that, or you just accepted the one-way in and the one-way out?
Well, I mean, two-way drive aisles, the required widths of a two-way drive aisle, I don't think that they, I think in original talks with the designer, I don't think that they could meet the two-way width for a double drive aisle with the requirements.
Well, they could if they moved the building up against the property line. The building wouldn't be in the center of the site.
Yeah. That's a design thing for them
Okay.
to answer.
I was just curious.
Yeah, it's, as far as the driveway cuts themselves, they will have to remove both of them and upgrade them to the most current ADA required driveway approaches, so they do have to rebuild them completely. So they do not meet ADA currently as they are.
Okay. Then a question, I guess, for Noriko on the trees. Delonix regia is proposed along the property line with the adjacent site to the east, which appears to be that species. Delonix regia has a average spread of 40 feet. So by allowing those on the essentially 2 or 3 feet in the property line, we're essentially going to require those trees to be whacked off at the east end unless they take over the neighboring property. So this is going to go to architectural review. So if we don't want to control the trees, then we would have specified that is looked at by the architectural review, because I love Delonix regia, but they don't belong in a 4 or 5 foot perimeter.
While that drawing is up, can I ask my question?
Yes.
The architectural drawings show that there's a double door, appears to be an entrance on the west side of the building. And it's, yeah, well, I wanted to point, well, the landscaping does not, it shows landscaping going all the way along there, and there's no hardscape, there's no sidewalk. I'm not sure what's going on there.
There's no
Okay,
entrance.
that's not showing an entrance on the west side of the building.
I think that's a question that probably needs to be directed to the applicant to see if they can explain.
Okay, because, yeah, it's, and there's also, I think in the staff report, it shows that there's sidewalk or entrance sidewalk or by bike on the west side. No, excuse me. No, I'm looking for the building entrance.
They showed doors in one of the other renditions, but here they show complete back to the street.
So I'm not sure, are we really just entering off the parking lot? Because I get on my bike and I pedal on down, or I walk on down to the paint store to get my paint chips so I can take them back and try before I buy anything. So I mean, not a lot of people, but I would imagine that there would be some traffic, and it's also telegraphs a different message if you theoretically have a pedestrian street and you want people to walk, but there's no entrance from the street for pedestrians. It tells everybody you get in your car and you drive there and you go in the in and out the out. And I don't think that's the message we're trying to
You're at a level of question.
create. Sorry.
You're-
So
I
my
mean,
question is there an entrance or not on the left, on the west side?
I think let's ask the applicant when we get to that point, and then depending on the answer, we can strategize on what to do about it from there.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner
Yeah.
Brotman.
Thank you. Noriko, did they submit any lighting cut sheets? I'm particularly interested in what they're proposing for the parking lot.
No, that's actually one of the recommended conditions of approval. The photometric plan that's submitted does not meet the city the outdoor lighting standards fully. And for the reason, staff is recommending a conditions of approval, which states that applicants submit the revised photometric plan with actual the light fixture specifications, subject to ARC's review.
So they haven't submitted any of the light fixture cut sheets to you yet?
Correct.
Okay.
Because it was not really the purview. I guess I should say that was more of a design concern. But yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Oh, no, the other thing was, in the staff report, you mentioned about the 2 parking spaces that were substandard, that they should be increased. Can you show me where on the plan that is?
Yes. So the end spaces.
Oh, So don't you require the wider parking space if you don't have backup space? Isn't that what it is, or?
So it's a little hard to see, but the width that's being proposed, that's shown as site plan, is 9 feet. It just needs to be widened or increased by 2 feet, or they have the option of, widening the planter, the curb, so that the pedestrian access will be provided.
Okay. I thought you were referring to the space at the southeast corner.
No. I
yeah.
was talking about the parking lots that are facing the building
there.
right here.
okay.
Because they are proposing 11 feet for those two end spaces. So they are in compliance with the zoning code.
Yeah. Okay, all right, thank you.
Right.
Other questions? If the applicant is here to answer our questions?
Hello, my name is Matt McWhorter.
You're basically here to answer questions because it's not a hearing. You don't
Correct.
have time. So if people have questions of the applicant?
Matthew, what's your relationship to the project?
We are the contract buyer, the developer on it. So we're under contract to purchase it. And then upon purchasing, we will develop it.
And are you Sherwin-Williams or are you renting it to them?
The Sherwin-Williams will be a tenant.
Thank you.
And is there supposed to be an entrance on the?
There is an entrance. The landscape plan just oversaw it. It was an oversight.
Okay, and is it
The main entrance. The main entrance is on the east side of the building.
so from the floor plans, it looked as though if you came in those doors, you were coming into the tinting area. It almost looked like a back of house use, but I wasn't sure.
You're coming into the back of house there. It's really an egress.
So
We
you
gotta have-
don't. Oh. It's really an egress.
It's an emergency egress. You got to have it for building code requirements. And I'm pretty certain we got to have storefront glass on the west side. From an operational standpoint, the front entrance is on the east side.
Are there other questions? Yes.
Well, let me ask you the question that I asked the engineers regarding the driveway. Had you considered a one single combined in and out?
Yes,
And why did you reject it?
because it doesn't work from an operational standpoint
For the building itself or for the
Correct.
parking lot?
for the parking lot.
Okay, because it
And-
essentially creates a dead end and,
It creates a dead end, deliveries are a challenge.
okay, I understand, okay. Yeah, understanding we're trying to reduce the number of curb cuts on a pedestrian street, but
Yes.
I understand that operational
One
issue.
iteration of the site plan pushed the building to the southeast corner, and it was one curb cut. Building had to be pushed to the street, which then,
Right.
from that
right,
scenario,
Yeah, okay, understood.
Did you ever think about a second story on this?
no.
Thank you. Looks like that is all the questions that are in front of us.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to make a comment. I can't support this. I can't support a building that has its back to the street. There is no way that I can vote for this. I can either have it come back to us with appropriate street frontage and not a backup house facing. I don't mind two entrances, but I really do think that this is nothing that we want in Palm Springs. So I'm going to see if there are other comments, but yes, Commissioner Murphy.
The Dunn Edwards store, I think, is configured similarly. There's a corner entrance, and I think there's also a back entrance. I'm not positive, but as I recall, there's also a back entrance from the parking lot. And I think one of the issues with this type of store, the paint store, is that most of the customers are painters, and they're going in and they're coming out with heavy cans of paint. And your example, Lori, of pedaling up and getting a paint sample is probably a really small minority of customers that go in. So I would disagree. I think if the west side can look like it is friendly to the pedestrians, whether it's, I think the vast majority of the customers are going to use cars and want to go in through the parking lot, not through the west side.
Customers may want this, I just don't think we want our city to have back entrances, to have the street face be a back entrance. It isn't anything that I want to see in Palm Springs. I want to drive along the street and see businesses. And if it means we don't have this business, we don't have this business, but I do want to see our businesses front to the street.
So I'm assuming we're off of questions now. We've gone to comments?
We've gone to comments.
Okay. I support you, Kathy, in the premise of it, but I understand the operation, and I think Commissioner Murphy hit it on the head with Dunn Edwards. It's the same. The majority of the activity happens off the parking lot because that's where the contractors or public customers come in and out. But there is a street fronting door, which is used. I've been in there a number of times, and there's people coming in. So I think it's essential that there be a front entrance on facing Palm Canyon, and that there's more glass than there is facing Palm Canyon. My personal feeling is I don't think we need to hold this up, but I think we need to fashion a condition that increases the amount of glazing facing Palm Canyon.
I would rather see them come back and show us that and holding it up for 2 weeks doesn't bother me. But it feels to me like it's a really major issue in terms of what we want in our city.
Couldn't we condition it and have the ARC then review the facade, the western facade?
They don't have to follow what we do when we ask them to take a look at something. And that's the problem.
I might suggest that they come back with a revised interior plan
Right.
that accommodates both a more substantial front entrance on Palm Canyon and still accommodates all the customers coming in from the east side. I think it's actually a pretty easy solution to the problem, to address the problem.
But my concern that no one's mentioned is security. I guess we won't know how many employees are going to have working at one time, but I think there is a likelihood that, I mean, what are you going to steal, paint cans? But people steal everything these days. Being able to monitor that front door for people coming in to do bad things.
Yeah.
And that's just part of business.
I share the chair's concerns. Palm Canyon is our pedestrian street, and we have a lot of walking businesses. And if we are trying to force a business that is not a walking business into a space that changes the way that street works, I'm not really comfortable with that. Typically, paint stores, and I've had the same experience that Commissioner Miller has with the other ones. I keep wanting to call it Dunkin' Donuts. It's what, Dunn Edwards? Dunn Edwards, okay. Going in from the street side, you can walk in from the Palm Canyon side, and so that makes kind of sense. But walking into an emergency exit where at the back of house does not make any sense. And I think you do need to address the internal configuration and not just make the outside look as if it is an entrance. I saw an experience in another Valley City where a development was done that had about 4 restaurants in a row, and it was referred to the backward-facing restaurants because the concept was the back of the restaurants was along Highway 111, and the front, you went around and parked and went in. And they have had turnover after turnover over the years, that it just has not been successful for the businesses, and it certainly didn't do anything for pedestrian traffic. So if there's a way to make this business more successful by a genuine entrance, and people that the uptown area has a lot of design-centered stores and home furnishings and things like that. They might actually get more more walk-in traffic, maybe, but at least it would continue the feel of Palm Canyon being something that you walk along. You don't drive your car from one business to
We
the
had a
next.
suggestion from Commissioner Rotman. Is that something you could accept? It's something I could accept.
Something like.
Yes, it's something, yes, I could.
So what we have is a motion to continue this and ask the applicant to come back, if they would, with a reconfigured interior where there's both an entrance, there's more glass, but there's a real entrance from the front as well as the back. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so, is that a motion on your part?
Sure, that's a motion.
I'll second that. Are there any amendments to the motion or any objections?
No, I just wanted to know, can we see a photo of the, I'm not sure which is the front door because these diagrams are not really labeled.
It's
says the
labeled west. Wrong project.
Control room, if we could go back to the presentation, we hit too many
Just
buttons.
vacation photos.
I can pull it up for you.
They're running a few meetings at once.
Oh.
There we go.
This is it.
What page is that? Thank you.
This is the back. And this is the front.
Carl? So, just one other comment, which can be part of the motion or not. Something that as you look at the west elevation, and assuming it will not have as much solid wall as the current design does, the plants that they selected along there are ocotillo and some low whatever. And if you're going to have solid walls like that on Palm Canyon, I think you need something that's a little more robust and provides a little more layering and a little more interest. So I'd like them also to come back and re-look at the landscape there.
That's acceptable to me as the seconder of your motion. Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Rotman,
Yes?
Chair Wormick,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alayan,
Yes,
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrell.
Yes.
Thank you. That finishes our business for tonight, and we are at Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments. Do we have any? Yes.
Last month I attended the city's, well, I forget what the group was called, but they were looking at internet access and especially in new developments. And I wanted to meet with with Director Hadwin. Their idea is that for big developers like Ascena and that we would ask developers to pre-dig internet access to the new homes or something to that nature.
Yeah, and I know that process is still underway, but I mean, that would get captured in through our entitlement process, through the normal conditions of approval. So we do a lot of that, you know, undergrounding of utilities for other purposes, and so we would just roll that right into that process, which I think is great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for attending that and for the update.
Any other? The planning director's report, and that will be also any discussion of the party, I guess.
Yes, so before we went live, I had introduced you to our new Assistant Planning Director, Tony Riederer, who joined us last week from the Portland area. He has an extensive background in all sorts of different kinds of planning, also some historic preservation work. Most recently, he has been very involved with zoning administration and zone code implementation. So we're excited to have him here at this moment in time for us, as we, of course, continue to undertake our comprehensive update to our zoning code. So really excited for his contributions to that. And you all get to know him over the coming weeks and months. So welcome, Tony. And good timing, because he can join us for our party next week, which the chair had just mentioned.
We'll all get to know you.
So we're a little bit delayed on our holiday party, but it's a nice time of year to get together anyways. And so I had sort of bugged all of you to think about bringing a contribution to that. That is liquid that we can all enjoy, and Kathy and I are taking care of the food. So we're looking forward to that. We'll of course have members from our ARC and HSPB as well, and staff. So it's a good opportunity for us to reflect on all of our tremendous work last year and everything that we're going to accomplish together this year. So looking forward to it.
And it of course includes significant others, or
Yes, please.
plus ones if you want to bring them.
Yes.
Can you provide us with Tony's contact information so that
Yes.
we might grill him?
I was holding off
Thank
as
you.
long as possible, but it sounds like we'll send it out, Tony, so good luck. Not a lot of major updates. We haven't had much going to council or to update you on. I think the last time we met, have we talked since the appeal was heard? Okay, so then we do have a big update. So of course, you all approved the fulfillment center in December, which was subsequently appealed. That did go to council a recent meeting and had a very robust hearing there as well, just as you all had experienced. A lot of the same players, a lot of the same discussion, a pretty full house. It was a long hearing and a very thoughtful conversation by council. You know, I think balancing the economic benefits and also, reviewing it in light of the decisions that they had made in 2022 regarding, promoting those uses in that particular part of the city, with, of course, the environmental impacts and some of the concerns that residents were raising. In the end, they did decide to deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission's decision to allow the project to move forward. They had asked for some additional architectural details that will be worked through in the ARC process, and there was a request and a lot of discussion about how do we know that the impacts that have been identified in the environmental review are what we will actually see on the ground once this project is online, and what does the process look like for evaluating that. So, there was a back and forth on that, but ultimately where it landed was that in 5 years, staff will initiate a review of what these projects in that part of the city look like once they're operational, because of course that one, in theory, will be online, as will potentially the next one that you'll all be looking at in a matter of months, which is the larger facility just north of it. So it will be a good time for us to check in around 5 years from now and see if we can do some analysis around what the actual transportation and environmental impacts are of those projects. So that is now moving forward to architectural review in the coming weeks.
Didn't it go to review?
I'm sorry, you're right, it did at the last meeting.
Yes, it did.
I said good morning when I arrived, and I'm clearly operating in a totally different week. It went to architectural review last week, and it was approved there with some of the changes that the council had discussed. So that is fully entitled at this point.
The council change was to darken the color so it matched the back hills, and I think what we saw was a slightly lighter color of beige, and council wanted a slightly darker color of beige brown.
Yes.
But I think that was the only change. It was unanimous in terms of upholding what we did. I don't believe they added additional environmental conditions. I think they were cognizant of the ones that we had added, and I think those were important to them that we had added them.
Yes.
So I think that's, I did, Commissioner Murphy and I both attended that to watch and see what happened to our earlier decision.
In fact, I think a lot of the discussion that you all had, and certainly the Sierra Club agreements and some of the other agreements that they had reached offline were helpful to the conversation. And a lot of it was focused again on the 2022 decision that council had made, really limiting those to specific areas and sort of communicating that at that point in time, council was thoughtful in the deliberation of identifying the areas where these are permitted and where they're not. It is fully entitled and will move forward through the process.
The only other thing, and I should have mentioned it, is both the director and I attended a Blue Zones hearing on the built environment yesterday. Much of what was discussed were issues that probably, some of them were in our purview, mainly the land, affordable housing type issues. Some of it was circulation issues in terms of safer streets. A great deal of it, and then a great deal of it was the request for shade and a sort of a master shade plan for the city, which seemed to be where that group was going.
Yeah, my sense was that a lot sort of gives weight to a lot of the conversation we all have in our normal course of business, and I think the priorities that we're all looking at through our zoning code update. So a lot of what the Blue Zones is talking about as it relates to our work are, planning concepts that we're very in tune with and certainly looking to make headway on through our zoning code updates. So missing middle housing and all of those kinds of wonderful things.
They were looking for more density for housing, some reuse of vacant buildings and use of vacant lots, but mainly focused on a middle area of housing somewhere in between high-rise residential and single-family homes so that housing options might be there for our workforce. I think that's...
Yeah, and a lot of conversation around just safe connections. So mid-block bus stops, for example, there's not a lot of safe ways to cross some of our major arterials. Of course, we've had a couple pedestrian deaths in the last several months and looking at ways to mitigate that. So a broader conversation than just planning, but certainly something that we talk about here.
Did speed cameras come up at all in that conversation?
Speed cameras were not discussed, but other measures to reduce speed were certainly discussed. So one of the items that was discussed was looking at permitting more on-street parking on some of our arterials because that has the effect of slowing down traffic, protected bike lanes as well, just different ways of reducing the flow of traffic
And road
to a
diets.
slower speed. Yeah.
Director Hadwin, I understand that the city council is going to be having a retreat here in coming weeks. Are there things relative to our work that they will be discussing, or is there no agenda published?
There is no agenda published. I believe an agenda will be published in the coming days. I won't pretend to be super involved in that or privy to what will happen at that. They do normally discuss their sort of pillars of citywide priorities, which certainly affect our work. And so I don't know exactly what they'll discuss, but I can imagine that the outcome of that meeting will impact our direction.
Thank you.
They usually expect that we know their priorities.
Yes.
So it would be, if there are priorities announced at the end of that, it would be nice that we...
Absolutely.
We hear
2
about
years
them.
ago, some may recall that they, after the retreat 2 years ago, certainly they had shifted some priorities around and we did present that. So we would plan to do the same here. And it weaves into our staff reports because we usually identify how projects relate to the council priorities.
I have one other question for you. Do you have any updates on the orchid tree development? And also, there's a development happening east of Smoke Tree. It's a large parcel
Yes.
Signs are up, but is that coming in front of the commission?
It's too bad Noriko left because that project is hers, but I'll speak to it briefly. It is looking at a plan development district. And so under the code, they first need to do a community outreach meeting, which actually happened this week. And so the notice that went up on site had to notice a 30-day notice for that hearing. That's led by the developer. They held that meeting earlier this week. Noriko attended. They also need to come before you for a study session. So that will happen in the coming weeks.
And
So
Orchid
they will
Tree.
come before you to pitch. That is a residential project. The site is designated for some of the highest density of housing in the city. So one of the things we're looking at staff is how what they're proposing aligns with our housing objectives, and that's something that will be in our staff report when we bring it forward to you as something we would like you all to consider and provide feedback on when that comes forward.
An Orchid Tree.
Orchid Tree. We'll be going back before the city council, I think in a couple of weeks, specific to the transit occupancy tax agreement that had previously been arranged with the developer. They're looking to make some changes to that. I'm not entirely involved with that process. It's being led out of our economic development department and through the city council and the city attorney's office. But we do have preliminary plans for what a revision to that project would look like if they can reach a TOT agreement with the city council. They're looking to make some changes to it, not huge changes, but just changes that have come to light in the last couple of years since this has been on hold a little bit. But they are looking to move forward with a similar version of what they had approved previously.
And
So
how
that
many
won't come in
years-
front of us?
It will.
Again?
It
Oh,
will. It will certainly come before you. I think, again, we have preliminary plans, but I think once they get the go-ahead from city council that they have a TOT agreement in place, then we'll move into the entitlement phase.
Okay.
And this will be revision number 4 or number 5?
Yeah, in that ballpark, Madam Chair. I 4 or 5 sounds right.
With that, does anybody else have anything? I'm daydreaming there. I'm going to adjourn us until 5:30, Tuesday, March 11th, and we will be meeting on a Tuesday. And from there forward on Tuesdays, we will end how many years of Wednesday meetings?
At least, well, it's been Wednesday for quite some time. Wednesdays at 5:30 for at least 5 years, right?
And it was Wednesdays at 1:30 at least in 2012. So
Yeah.
we're now meeting on Tuesdays for the
Yeah,
foreseeable.
that's right. City council stole our slot, so, but that's okay. Thank you, everyone.